Like a hunk of red meat to hungry feminists, the rallying cry, "War on Women," has signaled a shift in intersex dynamics. Women have been oppressed for far too long, shackled under a paternalistic system that wants to keep broads down. If you keep that line of thinking going, won't the reverse happen? If we're so eager to make amends and surrender in the war on women, maybe we don't really call a truce. Maybe we've just declared war on men. Well, let's have a conversation about it. See what's what. We'll find out. From college campuses to paternity and divorce, grab your helmet and your MRE. We're going into the foxhole. The war on men. This is The Independence. Hi there, I'm Kennedy, and welcome to your Almost Weekend. It is great to be with you, and I'm joined by Reason Magazine Editor-in-Chief, Matt Welch. War on Men, look at that. He's the general in the fight. Camille Foster from Free Think Media. He rounds out the flank of triple hot sauce. We are The Independents. Very good. And there we are. I like it. All right, it was one of the main thrusts of the 2012 presidential election, and it worked all too well against frustrated Republicans. The war on women, a catchy phrase, but was it empty?
The latest front in the GOP war on women is happening in the grocery aisles.
The Republicans in Wisconsin are ramping up the war on women. The war on women alive and well. How do you read it?
Do you think that there is something of a war on women among Republicans?
I think we have to fix that.
Republicans are being accused of waging a war on women for something they're doing that is very different than what the Democrats are doing.
Republicans swear there's no such thing as a war on women.
All-out war that your party is waging on women.
It's a war on your parts, is what it is. Well, we're not doing a show investigating the typical sex inequalities. We're going to be a little more contrarian today and throw a few grenades. Is there a war on men? Let's ask our dapper party panel. It's lawyer and feminist writer Jill Filipovic and Gavin McInnes, contributor at tachymag.com. All right, so Gavin, you've written a lot about this controversy and
Yes.
unpopular topic, so I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Are men being discriminated against?
Yes, clearly. I mean, the data shows it, from danger in the workplace to alimony payments to all these perpetual myths that, like, women make less money than men. And we accept it because we can take it on the chin. We're very nice guys. But I'm getting sick of it. I'm getting sick of the way we're portrayed in sitcoms. I'm getting sick of the way fatherhood is trivialized and single motherhood is put on a pedestal, because it's bad for America. And I used to think women were too stupid to understand this, but let's treat them like grown-ups and say sexism in 2014 is a myth, and we're going to have to get back to what matters, and what matters is fatherhood.
Okay, so you're saying that alimony is totally skewed because men end up paying more of it, although women earn a lot more money now than when the laws and the rules were kind of set in place.
40% of women are breadwinners in America, in American households. 90% of the alimony payments are by men to women.
Yep.
The numbers don't add up, and women should be able to do the same math that men can do. No?
Jill?
I think your math is bad. Women are 40% of breadwinners in American households because of so many single mothers. You have a lot of women that were never married in the first place when they have children. So they
Yeah,
don't
and they
have
choose
anyone,
that lifestyle, and that's child abuse.
Well, they don't have anyone to pay those alimony payments to.
What?
Alimony payments are gender neutral. There are plenty of women pay alimony payments to husbands. And same with child support payments.
No.
Madonna
Plenty
lost
of women-
$76 million on her failed marriage to Guy Ritchie.
She's not your typical broad. Look, the alimony concept was invented when it was the Nona cooking a spaghetti the whole life, and then she gets a band, she goes, I made spaghetti for you guys my whole life, and now I don't know have the skills. But now that women are working in the real world...
I didn't realize that's what it was. I'm so glad
Yes.
you
I didn't realize alimony was invented in Italy.
Yeah.
It was invented for
It was called
immigrants.
alimonia.
Fascinating.
It was invented for old-fashioned moms. We got new moms. You want equality? You don't get alimony. Sorry.
I think it's important to distinguish between the kind of equality that you're talking about, which is you're basically saying that women shouldn't have money to provide for their children. Men shouldn't have to pay money to provide for their children. When men actually petition for for custody of their children, they're very likely to get it.
What?
That's actually not true.
That actually is.
That is total bull.
When men actually request custody of their children, they almost always get at least joint custody.
Men always lose custody battles.
There's a huge... and they almost always get joint custody. I mean, there's a very big difference.
There's a massive bias against men on custody battles.
It's rare in contentious divorce proceedings where both parties are advocating for sole custody of the children. Most people that get divorced do actually come up with child support settlements and child care agreements that both parties can agree on.
Do you agree with Gavin
really
about fatherhood? That fatherhood is the missing link in society, and if there were more dads, I don't know, kids would be better off?
Yeah, I think fatherhood is a missing link. Yes, I do actually agree that we do need to talk about things like workplace injuries and deaths among men, that we do need to talk about the fact that men are much more likely to commit suicide and succeed than women, that we have a mental health care crisis among men, that men in America and around the world do suffer. But I think a lot of that suffering comes out of traditional gender roles and these expectations that men act tough, that they don't display emotion, and that they don't seek help. And I think that's also why we have a fatherhood crisis. I think all of these issues matter.
I think those are two different things.
I think it's feminists who are coming up with solutions.
To your first point, we're actually coming out of that, and we've rounded the bend on things like mental health.
Feminists see single motherhood and they go, sisters are doing it for themselves. And sisters are abusing their children. If you have children knowingly as a single mom, you're starting a child out with a disadvantage.
Did your parents stay married?
Yes. They did.
Well, sometimes marriage doesn't work out, Gavin.
Sometimes marriage doesn't work out.
It doesn't make you a child abuser.
It does if you choose that. If you choose to be a single mom, which is the majority of single moms.
Gavin, I think that's a weird claim. Sometimes marriage doesn't work out, and sometimes dad is a jerk. He's just an awful person.
Let's talk numbers.
And you actually don't want him in the household.
How many times?
But let's get back to some of these outcome disparities that the conversation seems to revolve around, because I think it's wrong for us, and I've done this before with race stuff. I think it's wrong for us to focus on the disparity and not focus on exactly what the phenomenon is, and just accept the fact that sometimes there are outcomes, and the outcomes happen to be disparate among men and women, and there isn't some sort of conspiracy being perpetrated against anyone. You said that sexism is dead. I would agree, it's probably dead, and perhaps there are some social values that are producing some not intentional or deliberate consequences, but are perhaps producing some things that we don't necessarily intend.
It may
but
well
still
be
skew
intentional.
outcomes.
There's evidence that the CIA
and there's nothing you can do about it from a policy standpoint at all.
That's actually true.
Okay, that's
sure.
It sounds really funny coming
We
from Gavin.
reward single moms with welfare payments.
Okay, but let me
reward destroyed families.
Hold on
I would
just
love
a second.
to see you survive off of welfare payments. It's not like women are living high on the hog with their, $300 a month to care for their children.
It's not $300 a month. Welfare with food stamps and more than 3 kids is more like $1,200 a month.
Okay, so Jill, let me ask you this. Is sexism dead?
No, sexism is not dead. Sexism is alive and well. If you look at the statistics, even among American women, which I know one of Gavin's talking points is that if you want to find sexism, you have to go abroad, and American women are just fine. American women do make less money. Yes, the gender gap has been pretty much not entirely erased, but it's been very much condensed among young single women without children. But as soon as
they make more money, young single women without children.
That's
more money than men.
That's what she's saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they make more money.
How do you argue with someone who just keeps making up figures?
I'm not making up figures.
Single women without kids
So Jill,
make more money
what are
than
the
men.
Figures? Like, which figure do we trust? Because the president has been talking about 77 cents, that women make 77 cents on the dollar for every man. What are the figures?
But
and what
has debunked a lot
and
of
what
that.
can
And
we actually
it's
accept?
not just maternity. It's also men are more willing to do things like ask for a raise. And men are more willing to work in more difficult jobs that pay them a greater salary. It's not as cut and dried as, and by the way, Gavin brought up a really good point. If employers thought they could get away with paying people 77 cents on the dollar, all major companies would only hire women.
They do it with illegal aliens already.
I wish that was true.
I mean, there's another show, Gavin.
There was a really interesting study that was done, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where they had they were looking at resumes of people applying for jobs as lab assistants. And these resumes were identical in terms of work experience and education. And all they did was change the name on the resumes from male to female. And what they found is that the male-named resumes were accepted and offered higher salaries overwhelmingly versus the female-named resumes. And the only difference here is the name. So I do think that there are some deep-seated sexist ideas within American society. Nobody's going out and saying, I don't want to hire a woman.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're reading a male name and they're inferring into that a level of competence.
Well,
It's
by the way,
prejudice. It's called post-judice. They've seen these males stay up all night. No, it's the definition of post-judice. They've noticed a pattern, and they've said, gee, my male employees tend to stay here all night, whereas my female employees tend to prefer to go to their daughter's ballet recital. I think I'm going to err on the side of my experience, which tends to be I'm more profitable when I hire men.
Okay, so Jill, if sexism is alive, is there sexism against men?
I do think that there is. I don't want to compare the discrimination that men face and the challenges that men face to the longstanding institutionalized oppression that women have faced for centuries.
Okay.
I think those are two different things. That doesn't mean, though, that men don't face very serious challenges, many of which I do think stem from these traditional ideas about gender and who should be doing what. I think sexism hurts men and women alike.
All right, well, Jill and Gavin, we're going to have you guys back to talk about something really uplifting and fun. They're going to be talking about divorce a little later in the show, and that's going to be great. It's going to be so calm and wonderful. All right, thank you both. We're going to see them in just a few minutes. From men to boys, if you have a son, you might agree with our next guest. The war on pint-sized men. Is it on? Stay with us. It's The Independent. It continues in moments. Zero-tolerance gun policies. You can't even nibble a Pop-Tart into a gun without getting suspended. Boys are more likely than girls to get in trouble. But has weeding out the sociopaths created a war on boys in school? Let's ask Christina Hoff. She's an AEI resident scholar and the author of The War Against Boys. Christina, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so tell me, does the war on men start with boys?
It certainly does. People sometimes say it's a man's world. Well, it's certainly not a boy's world. And if you start in just the classroom, boys are there on sufferance.
And tell me about some of the disparities. Boys are more likely to get in trouble. They're more likely to get suspended. What does that do to the overall early academic experience?
It's for many little boys, it's quite negative. They are, rather than encouraged for their imaginative, speculative stories and so forth, they're often punished. The sorts of games they like to play in the playground, tag and that rough and tumble play that's typical of young males everywhere, it's frowned upon. So as our schools become more sedentary, risk-averse, feeling-centered, they've moved away from the needs of boys.
Isn't it possible that some of the statistics that you're citing here are just kind of a representation of the difference between boys and girls? Like, they're going to get in trouble more because they are engaging in rough and tumble, and they'll probably go over the line more. How do you separate those things out?
Absolutely. It is more of a challenge to educate a boy. When a little girl arrives at school, 4 or 5 years old, she's much more capable of sitting still. Her verbal skills are probably more advanced. So teaching boys takes special skills. And there was a time where teachers understood that. But if you look at what's going on in our schools of education, they are not learning about the special needs of boys and how to educate boys. In fact, customarily now they learn that the boys and girls are really the same, and at the same time they set girls up as the gold standard and boys are treated as defective girls.
You make it sound like there was a time in the past where this was different. What changed? What was a driving factor?
A few things have changed. It's not that there was a time where boys were great students. Girls have always been better students. But there's just less tolerance for male behavior, for male antics. And so we have this just explosion in suspensions. And I agree there should be zero tolerance for violence or, heaven forbid, bringing drugs or guns to school. But as you mentioned earlier, little boys suspended for playing cops and robbers or just, their natural, healthy, exuberant play. And that has got to stop. So schools have become sort of hostile environments for little boys.
Well, the genesis of these zero-tolerance policies is apparently a lot of concern about in-school violence, which has spilled over into some really heinous school crimes that we've seen, or at least that's the perception. Is that something that needs to be addressed, and what are the alternatives, if so, to these zero-tolerance policies?
Well, almost no one supports zero tolerance, and yet these laws are there and they're applied without an ounce of common sense. And I support the idea of no tolerance, as I said, for a child who, or a young man, young woman who really crosses the line. But they have to factor in what the child is doing, what are his motives, what is his, what has he done in the past. And increasingly we see little boys punished severely and shamed for the crime of being a boy.
All right, well, it's not going to get any better in the classroom as we move into Common Core and one-size-fits-all education. So what can you tell teachers?
Well, what I would tell teachers, what I'll tell mothers, is to understand that on average, boys are different. A little girl, a little boy, it's just they have different interests, propensities. There are exceptions. I'm talking about the rules. What boys do not necessarily like to read the same thing girls do. We have very good studies. Girls prefer fiction, and a lot of little boys like nonfiction, and they might want to read their comic books. They want to write stories about a monster devouring a city. And I think teachers have to work with that and not view it as sort of symptomatic of mental illness. That's ridiculous.
All right, Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
With new federal money pouring to college campuses to fight sexual assault, have young men become the enemy? Find out, you raging sexist. Yeah, that's a war on men. How are men discriminated against?
In every way possible. We can't say we don't have a word anymore, nothing. Women are taking over the country.
Welcome back to The Independence, where we are asking, is there a war on men? If you're a young man falsely accused of sexual assault on a college campus, it certainly feels that way. Remember the Duke lacrosse case? Before any charges were filed, 88 faculty members brought into the narrative that 3 rich white lacrosse players gang raped a poor black stripper.
These 88 faculty members took out an ad, a full-page ad, in the Duke campus newspaper. They unequivocally asserted that something had happened to Crystal Mangum. She was claiming rape. The lacrosse player said nothing happened. They said that they would continue their activism regardless of what the court decided or what the police said. And they thanked public protesters for not waiting and making themselves heard. And the highest profile public protest that had occurred at that point had been a march in front of the captain's house in which protesters had carried large signs urging the castration of the lacrosse captains.
Greg Lukianoff is the president of the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, also known as FIRE. Greg, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So are men on college campuses the enemy?
Well, you look at the Duke lacrosse case. We're releasing a video about that this week, a little mini documentary.
And that was a snippet from that, correct?
Yeah, and that's what that was. And I feel like this was the ultimate lesson in why we believe in due process, about why we believe in innocent till proven guilty. But it's almost as if we've learned nothing from it. And it seems like both the Department of Education and the White House are saying together that it's actually that we're not fast enough, we're not rushing to judgment fast enough, which I think is kind of a crazy idea.
I mean, obviously, sexual assault is horrible. I mean,
Yes.
it's awful, but it seems like the threshold has been lowered so much, especially on college campuses, especially with all these the talk of federal programs and millions of dollars pouring in to fight sexual assault. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we're concerned about is, one, as of 2011, the Department of Education recommended that every school in the country adopt the lowest standard of proof for people accused of harassment and assault. And just recently, the White House came out with a report that recommended pretty much getting rid of trials entirely on college campuses when people are accused of rape and replacing it with a single investigator model. And I think this might be the only institution that actually thinks that there's too much due process when it comes to something as serious as rape.
Were local cops on college campuses uniquely unable to deal with this situation? Are they trying to fix a problem that is otherwise not being addressed?
That's a terrific question, because the main complaint here is that local police departments haven't been taking the real problem of sexual assault on college campuses seriously enough, but it seems like they've been trying to fix that by simply making it really easy to convict people on campus. The solution, I think, really should be making local police departments take this issue seriously.
So would you replace campus police with local police?
I wonder about what the ideal solution would be. I still think there would be there is still an important role for campuses to play, but we do need to get detectives. We do need to get SVU students to take the problem of sexual assault on campus seriously.
Well, Greg, I wanted to ask you quickly about the documentary you guys produced. Certainly, this case is one that everyone remembers because of the outrage that happened as a result of it. What happened to these guys? Are they still living with the consequences of being accused?
My understanding is that they settled. They got a relatively large settlement, and as best I can tell, they agreed not to talk about the case further. What's to me the legacy that I think is so astounding is those 88 professors that immediately found the students guilty have never apologized for it. They've never recanted their position, even though after time it proved them to be terribly wrong.
And there was a lot of misconduct here. I mean, it's the prosecutor who ended up going to jail. It's the professors on campus and journalists as well, in a lot of cases, who were really hyping this story.
And so quick to rush to judgment. I mean, it's really, I would say it's unprecedented, but maybe it was just the fact that it's such a massive case, though I'm sure this type of thing has happened before, and you certainly have experience with that, Greg.
Yep. And that's what you have to remind people about civil liberties all the time. It's about humility. It's about reserving judgment. It's about knowing you don't know everything in all cases. And I feel like what we've been setting up are ways to make it a lot easier to find people guilty when we already tend to rush to judgment as a species, not just as individuals.
All right, Greg, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's an interesting discussion, and we'll certainly continue with it in the future on The Independence. Well, now that we've looked at the war on men from a few different angles, you can start to ask yourself, who's more sexist, men or women? We will test your theory next.
Confused and you don't know what to do. It's hard to give an answer if you haven't got a clue. If you work it out, tell me what you find.
This is The Independence War on Men edition. When it comes to saying horrible things about the opposite sex, men are not always the worst offenders. All right, let the battle of the sexes rage on. Welcome to our brand new game, Name That Sexist. Our contestants today are no strangers to exquisite grooming, except for Gavin. We've got Joanne Nosuchinsky, the co-host of Red Eye on Fox News Channel, and Gavin McInnes is back.
McInnes, it's a hard C.
McInnes. McInnes. Where's McInnes? I've been thirsty at this bar for 20 minutes now. Okay. Are you people?
Yeah.
You people ready to play?
Lego.
Okay. Here we go. Question number 1. I love men even though they're lying, cheating scumbags. Who said this? Is it A, Penelope Cruz, B, Ashley Judd, or C, Gwyneth Paltrow? Who said it? Name that sexist. Gavin McInnes is right on the Guinness. You got it right, Gavin.
Recently divorced, right?
Consciously uncoupled.
Yes.
Right. So she's still out there, but she's mad.
She's a little bitter.
She's hot.
Yeah.
Gwyneth?
She's cute.
Ugh. Not to men.
Yeah, the crazy doesn't help.
Yeah, we like something to grab.
I just feel bad for her because she says the dumbest things whenever she opens her mouth. Like this. Number 2, women who seek to be equal with men lack ambition. Who said this? Was it A, Sandra Fluck, B, Elizabeth Warren, or C, Timothy Leary? Women who seek to be equal with men lack ambition. Gavin, you're in the lead. You've got 2. Matt and Camille, you've got 1. Joanna, you're still
the letter B, apparently.
Pick up the board.
It stands for boys.
Definitely.
And booze.
Oh my God.
She's wasted.
Great. I can smell it from here. It smells like lychee.
Don't let a match in here.
Question number 3. Here's the quote. Let's hope that the key conferences aren't when Sonia Sotomayor is menstruating or something, or just before she's going to menstruate. That would be really bad. Lord knows what we would get then. Who said it? A, name that sexist, Rush Limbaugh, B, Gordon Liddy, or C, Donald Trump.
Oh, that's too hard.
Isn't it beholden upon us to
Not
prove...
for Gavin McInnes, who has 3 on the board.
But is he wrong?
Camille's 1.
Judges are much more lenient after lunch. So you've seen ladies that time. That's worse than an empty stomach.
Okay. Quote number 4 and Name That Sexist. Most women are 1 man away from welfare. Who said it? A, Gloria Steinem. B, Marlo Thomas. C, Phyllis Schlafly. I thought that you would get this, Matt Welch. I really did. Gavin McInnes
Whoa,
still in the lead.
But I got one.
I don't know what anyone else has. I've stopped keeping score, Gavin.
Well,
The show
it's a
is made
fact.
for you.
That's just a fact. Gloria's right.
Here's quote number 5. Name that sexist. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong about hitting a woman, although I don't recommend doing it in the same way you'd hit a man. Who said it? A, Ted Nugent. B, Sean Connery. C, Gavin McInnes.
Ooh, I did say that. But
Gavin, you're still. She's hedging her bets.
you can't
She's splitting aces or eights.
There's actually no rule against that.
Sorry, babe.
Sean Connery said it. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with hitting a woman, although I recommend doing it in the same way you hit a man.
He said it after he had a McGinnis.
Number 6. This is great. Because when get scandalous and pull a voodoo, what you gonna do? You really don't know. I'm too swift on my toes to get caught up with you hoes.
Oh yeah.
Connie Chung.
I know who that is.
Who said it? A, Snoop Dogg, B, Jay-Z, or C, Kanye Kardashian?
That was me at karaoke
C is
last
not a
week.
real person, so that's not fair.
Gavin, you cannot lose at this game. You are seriously phenomenally
that is
wonderful.
from,
that was
from
Snoop
Ain't
Dogg.
No Fun.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Jay-Z is
right.
much more
I remember
articulate.
that.
Snoop Dogg's stoned all the time, so he talks like a weird toddler.
Okay.
Now
And no one's going to be able to catch up with Gavin, but let's just try. I may
let's
award
just do
5 points if I'm in the mood because I'm a woman. I get nasty. Okay, number 7. Here's quote number 7, and name that sexist. It is not sexist to think women are inferior at math and science. It's okay to be inferior at math when you're a magical creature. Who said this? A, that guy who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. B, J.K. Rowling. Or C, Gavin McInnes.
I'm not showing you mine.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with C.
The answer is C.
They can create life. That's like Superman. Why are we comparing apples and oranges? Hey, I'm as good at math as you. Yeah, I can make a human come out of my vagina. That's pretty impressive.
I don't understand the correlation between math and childbirth, but
One's a superhero magic beast named a woman. The other guy's going, I'm good at math, science. I know a lot about 7 inches punk records.
And that guy is not putting a baby in anyone.
no, that guy's not. It's like, get that thing away from me. I'll take the turkey baster for 1,000, Alex. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you. That was a perfect score, just for the record, correct?
Yeah, I believe it.
No, you lost on the last one.
Did he?
You didn't pick yourself.
You did.
Yes, I did.
You put up A.
You put up A.
You were C.
You did. No, we need it for a later show.
Spent so much time building that.
You tantruming
Man, he's a man.
man-child.
Yes.
You're going in timeout.
Worse.
But don't worry, Gavin will be back in just a little bit after we medicate him.
Maybe.
It'll be great. All right, thank you both, and thank you. Good job, almost. Time to leave the good times behind. We'll return to the war on men with some big questions about paternity. Who's your daddy? Stay put.
Don't go changing. Out of place, man. Don't change the color of your hair. Said no. I just want someone that I can talk to. I'll take you just the way you are. Word is born.
Welcome back to The Independent. Men are often dealt a lesser hand with paternity. If the child isn't yours, you can still be on the hook even if you've been fornicating with a less than honest partner. So what happens when the fruit of your loins has actually fallen from someone else's tree? Well, let's ask Carnell Smith. He's the founder of U.S. Citizens Against Paternity Fraud. He's not only the president, he's also a member. Welcome, Carnell.
Hi, thanks for the invite.
So, Carnell, tell me your story. How did you start this organization?
Well, I started the organization because I found out after supporting a very dear child for 11 years, I found out that her mother had lied to me and that her mother's other boyfriend was the actual father. And after appealing this all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, I found out the courts were not interested in the truth, and I felt that was a travesty.
So even though you were proven to be biologically not related to this beautiful child through no fault of her own, certainly, you still were on the hook to pay for child support.
Absolutely. In fact, the mother asked the court to put me in jail because once I had 3 DNA tests proving that I had not caused her pregnancy, I demanded to be set free since she was not going to allow me to have a relationship with her daughter.
And what is your relationship with her today?
Actually, none. Her mother said that if I refused to pay under the pay or go to jail court order, that I could not see her daughter. And for me to remain in a situation where she could put me in jail at loss of liberty, property, there was no way I would agree to those conditions.
That's really sad.
Carnell, most Americans don't realize that in cases like this, DNA evidence is not enough to get you off the hook, or at least in many cases. Can you explain a little bit through your organization the types of cases where DNA does not factor in?
Absolutely. In fact, for at least a couple of categories of men, for the single men, what happens if the guy, he goes to the hospital, he's told that a baby is his, and that he should sign the paper because he wants the baby to have him as the father. And just by signing that document, it's enough to establish a court order for child support. But if he later finds out he's not the father, the truth is not enough to set him free.
And that's actually a program through hospitals called, I think, the Parenthood Opportunity Program, where the hospitals are incentivized to get them to sign that because they want welfare to be paid for by the father. You can't get a passport in America if you owe $2,500 in child support. What are some other issues like that?
Well, some of the other issues for men and teen boys is their loss of liberty, because you can be jailed for either inability to pay or refusal to pay once you know you're not the father, loss of driver's license, loss of business license. If you're an attorney, you could actually run your risk of being disbarred because you're supposed to be an example of the bar. I mean, there are so many factors that we've asked the question, why not make judgments based on truth established by facts rather than opinion?
Well, Carnell, since your situation, have there been any positive developments in terms of reform and passing new laws to make the system more fair?
Absolutely, yes, there have. Even though I was unsuccessful in taking the issue to the U.S. Supreme Court, which would have allowed for a bright line decision that could have been used by all states, I was simultaneously lobbying for laws here in Georgia. And after getting over 99% support from both houses of representatives and the governor signed the law, I ended up winning my case as the first guy using that law. So Georgia, Ohio, Wyoming, and Florida, and several other states that I've been involved with have successfully passed laws.
And do you think paternity tests should be mandatory in delivery rooms? That kind of creeps me out, but you're for that, aren't you?
Well, it would actually mean they would actually swab the mouth of the baby and the mother in the delivery room so that then you could match up the DNA of the child with the alleged father. And that could be done even for men who are the military who are deployed. And in many cases, you're not going to get the father to be there just because he has a traveling occupation, or in the case of military, he's simply not available at the time of delivery.
All right, Carnell Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up next, divorce can be very expensive, especially if you're a dude. The war on men goes to court and gets nasty. Next, stay with us. You're always on the run. Welcome back to The Independents. When rich people part ways, the money tends to split with the couple. It's usually a wealthy man who kisses half his fortune goodbye. Take Russian billionaire Dmitry Rybolovlev. It's a hard name to say. Rybolovlev. The costliest divorce ever. It set him back $4.5 billion with a B. Neil Diamond was married to his wife Marcia for 27 years before he uncoupled with $150 million. Sweet Caroline, that's a lot of scratch. Michael Jordan gave his baby mama and ex-wife a $168 million payout. He's still bullish on marriage. He did, in fact, remarry. Good job, Juanita. Tiger Woods' string of mistresses not only cost him endorsements and the ability to win a major, he also gave Elin Nordegren between $200 and $500 million. The billionaire Beatle, Paul McCartney, he could have gotten shellacked by his one-legged ex. She took him for a paltry $48.6 million when she could have gotten hundreds of millions of dollars in party cash and prizes. Well, our panel, Jill and Gavin, are back. So do women deserve these big payouts when marriage ends, Jill?
I think it's first important to emphasize these are outliers. Most people are not splitting multi-million-dollar estates with their partner. You know, that said, marriage is a unit, and a lot of work that women do within marriage tends to go unrewarded and uncompensated, especially when it involves childcare. You know, a lot of these men that have, a ton of money or maybe work very high-profile jobs, their wives are caring for the children, caring for the household, and essentially making sure that these men are able to live the lives that they're living and make the kind of money that they're making. And so I do think that that should be compensated when the couple splits up.
By half?
You know, I don't know exactly how divorce courts are always breaking up these estates. I mean, it's a very complicated,
it varies from state to state, obviously. I mean, I know you're a lawyer, and you probably know the ins and outs of the law far better than anyone else on this panel. But it does seem a little skewed, doesn't it, Gavin?
It sure does, especially when 70% of women start the divorce. And I think it's because their libido dies, and they just go, "Why am I lying underneath this pig? Get him out of here."
Or it could be that their husbands are philandering a-holes and they're
That's the stereotype, but men are
I'm so
too
glad
lazy
you're here to break
cheat.
down the truth.
Trust me,
Is that a
first of all, no one wants to sleep with us. We look like baked apples that got left by the side of the road.
I'm not sure that's true.
Look, I'm rich and famous. No one's beating down my door. I've never had an opportunity to say no.
Weird.
It doesn't come up.
And Gavin's
Men don't
Twitter,
cheat. I don't
Gavin's
know,
Twitter
I know
account
hundreds
explodes.
of married men. I don't know any cheaters.
Have they
In fact,
offered?
in New York City, statistically, it's women who do most of the cheating.
Oh,
They are
interesting.
tipping the cheating.
You know what it
polls.
is? Do 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 do
They
do
watch
do
Jeopardy.
do do. Sex in the City.
Oh,
Everyone wants to be Carrie
Well, that's a
Bradshaw.
good
Everyone
point.
wants to be Samantha.
Feminism has glorified promiscuity, it's glorified single motherhood, and it's trivialized fatherhood. And that sounds cool, and men take it, because all right, fine, ladies, have your fun. But it's ripping apart the very fabric of America.
should women just not work?
Like just a ridiculous amount of power to this beast called feminism.
Yeah.
I mean, does it really affect your life? You're talking at the opening of the show like, hey, look, men can take it on the chin, and then you about it for a really long time that you're sick about it. You're not taking it on the chin. You're
That's
whining
correct.
like a victim.
I'm done taking it on the chin.
You're actually
Now
whining
you're
like
going to be a victim.
You're whining like a girl.
Sorry, I should have said other men take it on the chin. I'm not taking it. I'm a and I've had enough.
I think that we can pause, hopefully, to agree that this country, thanks to Ronald Reagan, actually went. I know I finally said something nice about Reagan in your presence. Made a huge human achievement, let alone feminist achievement, back in 1970 when he signed through no-fault divorce in California. Before, you had to go to Reno for like 2 months to sit and get your Reno divorce. And you had to sue for, cruelty on the part of your spouse and all this kind of stuff. We've stopped that in all 50 states within 15 years after that. Everyone has no-fault divorce. That, I think, leads to, it makes it easier to split things up, but it also makes it easier to get out of relationships where people feel trapped, and it makes it much more a contract with
untrapped. There's no stigma with divorce. It's cool. Louis C.K. brags about it on stage. Kevin Hart brags about it on stage.
He doesn't look too happy.
Funny.
He does not look too happy, Louis C.K.
Well, he seems to think he's a great dad, even though he's only putting in 50% of the time that the rest of us real dads put in.
All right, Jill, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I guess I'll end by saying that I think it's important to recognize that ever since no-fault divorce was passed across the country, murder rates of husbands have actually decreased significantly. So fewer wives now trapped in abusive marriages. No, it's saying that no-fault divorce has been very good for men as well.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Jill and Gavin. Very enlightening. I feel so dirty. All right, well, what have we learned so far on this journey to better understand how the sexes interact? Is there a war on men? Is there a war on men?
A war on men? I can't answer that question.
Why not? Pretend he's not standing there. Just whisper it to me. People if there was a war on men, and the results were far from unanimous. Take a look. Is there a war on men?
Of course there is. Is there a war on men? No, I think that most men actually are able to hold their own still.
Are men discriminated against?
No, I don't think so.
Are men discriminated against?
I agree. Yes, they are.
We're always being discriminated against. Why isn't there a war on men?
Are women better than men?
Yes. I gotta run.
That's the war on men talking.
There's always a war on men.
How so?
Because we're smarter.
Are men the new women?
Hell no. We don't go that far.
Whoa.
Your wife just said you are.
Yeah, she's crazy. She don't know. But she runs the house, not me.
Is there a war on men?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Is there a war on women?
No.
Are men the new women?
No.
Are women the new men?
No.
No?
I hope not.
Is it a man's world still, or
It's still a man's world.
Are men persecuted in our society?
No.
Are men the new women?
Actually, I think women are the new men.
Is there a war on men?
No.
Well, like for example, when a man is carrying a baby, women look at men differently because it's expected for women to actually do that.
Yeah. Is there a war on men?
Oh, please. How childish. Goodbye.
I loved her. She was my favorite. Oh, please. How childish. Really? All right. Well, what have we learned today? I will turn to the gentleman on my left.
I agree with that last caller. Please, how childish. No, it's always strange to be suddenly, as a white California male, to be in the victim's chair. So there's a war on me? Hooray!
Finally.
I get to be one of those people. But at the same time, it's I don't want that. It feels different sitting here. It's hard to take seriously that there's an organized set of violence pointed at my collective class. I think it's much more fruitful to look at individual cases of injustice. Maybe look at the patterns behind them and the attitudes that went into it. But if we look at injustice and try to fight those, as in the cases of people who are wrongly accused and convicted of things, that's the best way to go forward in dealing with all manner of trouble in this world.
Yeah, maybe glance at the patterns, but when it comes to systemic problems, social ills, we should evaluate our solutions to those problems for their effectiveness and not their sort of perceived impact. It's not about settling historic gender issues or anything like that. It should be about teaching kids to read, making schools safer, genuinely so, and improving life. The war on women, just like all other metaphorical wars, is phony and baloney.
All right, very good. Well, there you have it. Men are the new women. So the battle will rage on, but it's all pretty silly. Don't define yourself by your gender. It's too limiting. And next time you feel like playing the victim, man up and grow a pair. Come on. All right, go ahead and visit us on Facebook and Twitter and online at foxbusiness.com/The Independents. From Matt Welch and Camille Foster, there they are, so manly. I'm Kennedy. Good night.